Good morning. My name is Dawn, and we are here for the Lighting for Upgrade for Retail Outfits or Retail Stores webinar, and I appreciate you joining us today. All of PGE's trainings are in part sponsored by Energy Trust of Oregon, and we work together to make sure the concepts and recommendations you learn are consistent across all of our individual programs and services. During the webinar today, I will introduce various lighting upgrades, opportunities for your general store area, and even some spotlighting that you'll do on your product in your store. As you might know, LED technology is now safely integrated into the lighting industry and offers many viable options for your stores. So you will see us covering a lot of LED today. Beth has given you a handout, either emailed it to you this week or you just received it through the download. It'll have some fill in the blanks that will be covered throughout the webinar, and you'll either hear me say them or you'll see them on the screen. So keep an eye out for that just to kind of help you through. Sometimes it helps us as we're learning to write things down, or at least for me, so hopefully that will help out today. Please take note of some of these concepts on the screen that you see. 4 key objectives for us today, and I hope you will be able to leave this webinar with at least one of these objectives, maybe more. We want you to learn how to light your retail store effectively and efficiently with LED lighting. And so effectively and efficiently can mean a lot of things, and hopefully you'll walk away with that today. I'm going to introduce some of the latest technologies in LED that can relight your store, help you understand the benefits of what it means to upgrade or improve your lighting in your space. And then we will end with some incentive offers and free services that you will receive from PGE and from Energy Trust of Oregon. So let's get started. You already heard a little bit about me. I just want to know now who you are. So you can use your annotation tools that Beth mentioned and tell us which one fits your position best, and just mark it or color it or highlight it, whatever, be creative. And while we're waiting for that tally to come in, I'd like for you to be thinking of a particular store or a particular space that you know of for sure that needs an upgrade. So possibly if you're a building owner or building manager or property manager, you might have a store that you know the lighting is very outdated and that tenant is really needing an upgrade. So you might write that down. On the second page of your handout, there's a little place that says your space. That's where you start writing your notes on that, and I just want you to be thinking about it throughout the webinar today. It's always good to just start with one. If you could complete one location, it will be so much simpler to continue the process. Excellent. Good. Looks like we've got a good variety today of many that come from variables of the industry. I'm going to start with a few lighting terms that we will use throughout the webinar today just to help you with just lighting geek terms that sometimes I end up using and forget to tell people what I'm talking about. So if you don't have a full lighting background, hopefully this will help a little as we go along. The 4 items that you see on the screen right now are just lighting sources. So most of you are familiar with fluorescent. This is called linear fluorescent. That's what we refer to. You might call it a tube, you know, a fluorescent tube. And this one is a compact fluorescent. You're probably familiar with that as well. And also in your homes, you might see the screw-in version of it, kind of like a twist lamp. You know, that's one way people refer to it. We call it linear fluorescent and compact fluorescent. This lamp, and by the way, lamp is actually the technical term for a light bulb. This lamp is an HID version. HID stands for high intensity discharge, and that just is another lighting source that you might be familiar with in your stores, possibly in your stock rooms, storage rooms, or warehouses. You would see this type of a lamp. And then, of course, there's LED technology as well, and these are just basically your LED chips. That's what they look like up close. Each fixture, with the exception of LED, has the different components. So a lamp, like I referred to up here, these three are lamps. And then each fixture also has a ballast or a driver. So this is a ballast. A driver looks just like it, but that is kind of what drives the lamp. And if you had a driver and these LED chips, this driver drives the chips or the LEDs that gets them to go. Think of it that way. A light fixture is actually, the technical term is luminaire. I won't make you call it that, but a light fixture has a bunch of different types, and they're listed here. So you might have a recessed troffer up in your ceiling that is, above the T-bar or the grid. Recessed downlight, which looks like this. So here's your recessed troffer up in the side of the ceiling. Here's your recessed downlight. This is a strip fixture that's surface mounted to the ceiling. Low bay or high bay fixture looks very similar to this, and that's that HID lamp that goes inside the fixture. Here's a track head, and a lot of these also have retrofit kits. So those are some terms that you can get used to throughout this webinar. Each fixture has a bunch of different components in it. So you see this guy installing a ballast or a driver here. You see all those wires, of course, sockets on the end. This is referred to as a reflector. The back of that housing is right there. And then you cover that up with a lens or a louver. This one is actually referred to as a lens, and it reflects off the back of this. Some of the light goes up and reflects down. So lots of different technology terms for you there, but hopefully that just gets you started, and those are also on your handout. One other important term that I wanted you to be aware of, when we're talking about retail, it's important to remember things like beam pattern or beam spread or distribution. Those words are telling us when the light comes out of this light fixture or when it comes out of the lamp or the track head, where is it going? How far is the beam pattern spreading? And is it going to highlight your product? Is that the goal, or are you just highlighting or trying to light the floor or some of the shelving? So those are important terms to know. We've reached an era in the lighting industry that just a few years ago we wouldn't have imagined we'd be here. LED technology is actually the main lighting source for upgrades in our territory, as well as for new construction. The Energy Trust of Oregon incentive projects for lighting consist of more than 80% LED technology being installed now. And in some cases, in some of the programs that they offer, 98% of the products being installed are LED. And that's a very high number compared to 5 years ago. According to the Department of Energy, there were 473 million LED units installed in the United States in 2015, which was more than double the number of the LED unit installations in 2014. So you can see it's increasing. If you want to read further about all of this, you can visit the Department of Energy website. If you want to write this down, it's energy.gov, and just type in solid state lighting or LED, and there will be thousands and thousands of pages to help you sleep at night. A lot of information that'll help you kind of understand where we're at with LED and how far we've come, and that it is a very viable solution. I'm guessing you are somewhat familiar with LED technology, what it's capable of, and here are some examples. You can use it on your glove as a built-in flashlight. You can even highlight your shoes. You can highlight your eyelashes, or forget paying for those really high-priced diamonds. This is my favorite. There are many options available for this technology. We're pleased to be able to embrace it in our industry. Obviously, this isn't our industry that you're looking at on the screen, but in the lighting industry, we're excited about what it has to offer, especially because of the significant amount of energy savings available with LED. However, my goal today isn't just about how much energy you can save. I want you to walk away understanding the benefits of quality lighting in your stores and how it will affect the people in the stores, especially your shoppers. That will help you sell some product. Just think about how it is for you when you walk into a store. What's it like? How do you feel? Sometimes it might feel gloomy. Sometimes it might be too bright. to blue, you know, all those different things. I can think of a store right now that when I walk in there, it feels very cool and blue and cold, which doesn't give me the warmth that I actually desire in a shopping environment. And that might be how they want it, you know, but when you're thinking about your stores, what do you want, how do you want your customers to feel? Lighting is actually one of the things that will help you make a difference. We'll start in the main area of your store, which you might refer to as the showroom, so to speak, or we call it the general lighting area. If you look at a retailer magazine or any retailer designers, they'll tell you that one of the best ways to boost sales is to ensure your lighting in your store is appropriate for your customers, meaning that you're getting the right amount of light and the appropriate type of lighting to help them shop and buy stuff. With LED technology, you can easily update your store's lighting, and you can save energy too. The lighting design community will use what we call IES Guidelines to light your retail space when they design a major remodel or a brand new store. So IES is Illuminating Engineering Society. It's kind of like the Bible, you know, of lighting, been around for over 100 years. They give you some guidelines for how to light your store appropriately or any space. The numbers in these columns that you see here are referred to as foot candles, which is like the measurement of light. So this one right here is general retail. It's telling you that an average of 50 foot candles is appropriate for a general retail environment. Foot candles are measured by a light meter, which can be purchased at a local electrical distributor, or you can contact your lighting professional partner and you could just borrow theirs. That's a possibility. And there are other factors to keep in mind, such as energy code requirements and daylighting, but this just gives you a guide. So you'll need to consider the condition of your existing space, such as the color of carpet, the color of the walls, the condition of the paint on the walls. The space that you have in mind that you wrote down on your little handout is ready for an upgrade, if that you have in mind is ready for an upgrade, and it has less foot candles than what you're seeing there, then you know for sure that it's needing the appropriate lighting in that space. So for example, if you go after this webinar and go take a meter and it's down in the 30s and it's a general lighting store, you know that it's not even reaching the recommended guidelines. This is a very short version of their chart that I've clipped off here, and you actually can get a copy of it from Beth. You can just send her a note and say, I'd like a copy of that foot candle guide. It's only 2 pages. However, the IES manual is actually about 9 pounds worth of thousands of pages. So just this little cheat sheet is helpful just for a few various areas. Some of your stores will have a recessed fixture in them, typically in a T-bar grid ceiling. So as you see here on the ceiling here, this is grid. These are the light fixtures. This is a great example because they have different colors of lamps in them. Some of them are out. So that's a pretty common older style recessed troffer that you can upgrade. This is a parabolic louvered fixture. This is another common fixture that was used in retail environments that you might see. Usually there are 3 lamps that shoot down through these louvers. Over the years, you may have upgraded these troffers with various options, such as going from fluorescent T12, which would be the fat T12 lamp, to T8 technology. Maybe you've added some different lenses, taken out the louvers, added a lens or reflector kits or things like that. LED technology can now take you to the next level. So even more energy efficient, so you'll save, you know, on wattage as well as high fixture efficiency. And what that means is how much light is getting out of that fixture and where is it going. That's basically what fixture efficiency means. That's an important factor when it comes to lighting your stores. When upgrading your fluorescent recessed troffers, one option is to purchase a brand new LED fixture, which is similar to the one you see here in the ceiling. So it's got a lens that covers all those little LED dots there. Every major manufacturer makes a version of it. Many different lens options for appropriate light distribution patterns like we talked about in high fixture efficiency. The cost will range, but it's about the same as what you would have paid for, or close to the same as what you might have paid for a brand new fluorescent fixture, because it's come down that far. The wattage for a new LED troffer will range from 45 to 55 watts, which is a nice energy savings. 20 to 45% in energy savings is available because your typical T8 fixture that you might have in fluorescent is about 86 watts. So just remember that as far as fixture efficiency is concerned, it acts a little bit different when you're talking about LED. So the best thing for you to do without going into a bunch of detail is to get a sample installed. When you're replacing a fluorescent fixture, one for one with LED, have them install a sample so you can see where the light's going. Is it the appropriate amount of light? You can measure it with your foot candle right underneath and just see if it's doing what it says, because LED does not act the same as fluorescent as far as fixture efficiency. If you want to get more technical, you could ask your lighting professionals to do a lighting layout, and they use software for that. And if they don't know what that means, you might want to move on to a different lighting professional, but they can do some software that'll tell you what their fixture can do for you using a lighting layout. Here's some other examples of brand new fixtures, different lenses. You can be very creative with LED. Another option for you is to use a retrofit kit if you have a fluorescent troffer. You can use this LED retrofit kit. There are many manufacturers that make a simple kit where you can transform your existing fixture using the housing into a brand new fixture, so you don't have to take the entire light fixture out. So here's kind of how the retrofit process works. So here's it looks like up in the ceiling, and they've already kind of gutted it out. You would also take out these sockets, because for LED, new retrofit kit LED, you will not need the fluorescent sockets. You'd take the ballast out, and then you would put a new driver in back there. And you can leave the sockets. It looks like in this example, they just went right over the sockets. I always recommend taking them out. And then you install this LED kit on top of it with a little bit of a reflector on the side. This is just one version. And then you put the lens on top. So that's kind of a cool process, because you've used the existing housing that was already in the ceiling, so a little bit less waste. It also may be a little bit more cost-effective installation-wise. But you just have to see what the condition of your existing fixture is to see if it would work for you. Same amount of savings, 20 to 45% energy savings, just like a brand new fixture. It depends on if it's the viable solution for your space. So you just need to look. You can look at both options and find out. There are a lot of benefits for both of these options, because you are saving energy, you have updated your facility, and made the light levels appropriate for selling product, which is a good thing. Here's another kit that looks very similar. This is just another version. So as you can see, you've got that LED run right here, and then they put a new lens on it. So look up some of these with your lighting professionals and get some samples installed in your locations, just so you can see if it would work for you. Here's a little case study I wanted to cover, just so you can get an idea of what it might look like. So this is a store that had existing 23 4-lamp fluorescent T8 recessed troffer fixtures that equaled 112 watts. This was a pharmacy area in a store, so they needed a lens, so it was an actual lensed, acrylic lensed fixture. They're not interested in anything being real decorative. So here's what their fixture originally looked like. It was a 4-lamp, but they had taken some of the lamps out, as you can see here, and were only using 2 in some areas, hadn't replaced them. When they got, this is what the fixture looks like with the lens on. The light levels were just fine, and all they wanted to do was really save energy. So in a pharmacy, you can imagine they have high light levels because they have a lot of really small pills that they have to see and make sure they can see what they're doing. And so this is what it looked like. So their goal was energy savings. So they ended up installing 1-for-1. So remember, they had 23 originally, and they installed 23 of a 45 watt. So their 4-lamp fixture, fully lit, was 112 watts. They went down to a 45 watt LED, and underneath this lens here, you're looking at LEDs, strips, basically. They went with a flat lens troffer, and it looks basically the same. This is a 5,000 lumen LED, which basically is compared to each of those lamps in the fluorescent is about 2,700 lumens. So as you can see, the light output of the LED looks totally different than it does with a fluorescent. And so you don't have to worry much about that. What you have to worry about is, are you getting the appropriate light levels in your space? But it's a 5,000 lumen, this particular version is. So you can keep an eye out for that too, ask them what the lumen output is, and then, you know, just make sure that it works for what you're doing. Here's what the numbers look like. This particular area, the initial cost was about $4,200. They received an energy trust incentive of a little over $1,000. So their annual cost savings, just for these 23 fixtures in this little small pharmacy area, was about $450. That's a 14% rate of return. So if you're paying the electric bill here, or your tenant's paying the electric bill here, they are saving annually on their electricity. If you're a property manager and you're paying for the upgrade, this is how much you're saving, because you would receive an energy trust incentive and you would keep a happy tenant. So it's good both ways. Some of you may have stores that use bare open strips like this, so you can see the lamp up in the ceiling. Sometimes it's an open ceiling. Sometimes you might even see it in a grid ceiling. You know, like imagine a Rite Aid, for example. They have open strips on a grid ceiling. This type of fixture is a bit glary, but in some environments it's workable, such as maybe a hardware store or an auto parts store. I wouldn't recommend it for clothing and things like that. This fixture typically consists of T8 or T12 lamps. What you're seeing here are the T8 version of a fluorescent. One option would be to purchase a brand new LED fixture. Many manufacturers make them, and the cost will be a little bit higher than a standard fluorescent strip, but you would be able to save a lot of energy. Shouldn't have to touch the fixture for a long time. Here's what the inside looks like, just this big, long run of LEDs across the bottom of that strip fixture. So very similar to the fluorescent, you just take the tube out and you add this strip of LEDs. For a retail environment, you would want to include a lens. This is not commonly done with fluorescent strips, because in a fluorescent strip, the fluorescent tube is already, covered. But when you have LED, it's going to be very glary if you don't add a lens. So here's a couple of examples of a strip fixture with a lens on them that might look a lot better in your retail environment. So just keep that in mind if you do upgrade that way. This may be an option for you. LED tubes is what they're referred to most of the time. This is a fluorescent looking lamp, but they kind of stuck LEDs in them to make them look the same and to be able to fit in some of the same type of fixtures. So some people refer to them as TLEDs or LED tubes, either way. If your existing fluorescent strip fixtures you're wanting to upgrade them, this is one option you could use. You could also put the LED tubes in a fluorescent troffer as well. The light output is very good for this LED. When they originally started doing LED tubes, they were way far behind, but now there are over 1,000 of them that exceed 3,100 lumens, and what that means is your standard T8 lamp that you use in your stores, or your high output T8 lamp, is about 3,100 lumens, and they have several of these now that exceed that. So that's a good thing. There have been some recalls on some of the LED tubes, so just keep an eye out for that. It's because it's newer technology, and that happens quite often. The cost has decreased quite a bit. So the fluorescent T8, for example, is going to be about $5 or less. A T-LED ranges from $15 to $35, depending on the wattage and manufacturer, a lot of variables to it. Sometimes you might even be able to get under 15 if you're buying a big bulk of them. They don't all look like this. Some of them are, have a little bit of a covered lens. This just gives you an example. This is a little bit glary when you install it. So one thing to keep in mind is if you're putting them in a troffer type of fixture like this, and sometimes even a fluorescent strip, this is a fluorescent tube. See how the light distributes 360 degrees there? This is what a TLED would look like. The light distributes 180 degrees or 90 degrees. So remember that whatever fixture you're putting it in, it's going to make a difference because you won't get any bounce off of the back of the fixture. And if that's what it was designed for, it may not have the same effect that you originally had planned. So keep that in mind when you're purchasing TLEDs for troffers especially. There are 3 basic types of TLEDs. One uses the existing fluorescent ballast, so you just basically plug it right into the sockets just like a fluorescent and uses the fluorescent ballast. Make sure that's the type that you've purchased. And some of them have some variables to them, like you have to read the documentation to find out what ballast you could use on it. And there are some that just bypass that existing fluorescent ballast and they wire it directly to the socket. That means you just have on the end of the tube, you might have a little bit of a driver in there. And then the third option is a brand new LED driver, which replaces the fluorescent ballast, and then the new LED tube. So those are your 3 basic. And the Energy Trust, of course, has some incentives that you'll hear about at the end of this webinar for some of the TLEDs. Here's a case study of some TLEDs. Basically, this particular store had 73 8-foot, so this is an 8-foot single lamp strip fixture with T12 lamps in it that was about 79 watts altogether. What they ended up doing was they installed 73 of a 36-watt LED tube. So they were able to cut the wattage in half. But basically they went with 4-footers. So the TLEDs are 4-foot versions, so they would have put 2 4-foot in this 8-foot fixture and added some sort of a socket in between to be able to make that happen, which you do with fluorescent anyway, so that was nothing new. So each of those tubes would have been 18 watts, so for a full 36-watt LED. So that's 50%, very nice. Here's kind of what it looked like when they got finished. A nice, great lighting for an aisle there because they're going to have to take a look at a lot of small print. So LEDs seem to have done the job. So they had an average of 60 foot candles. So remember our foot candle chart from IES? And now they were at 62 foot candles. So let's see, this was before 60 and they were averaged at about 62. So let's see if they met the guidelines. According to this would just be a general retail environment, and IES is recommending 50, so they're a little bit over, which I actually am completely okay with, because in a parts area like that where customers or employees are having to pick product and read labels, a little bit more is actually better. And I don't think it was glary the way that you could see it on the screen there, so that was a good thing. So here are the numbers. They paid for these 73 fixtures, about $6,500, got a nice incentive from Energy Trust of $3,100. So their annual cost savings just for that small amount of area, $1,200 a year. So remember, this is over time. They won't have to touch these fixtures. So take that almost $1,300 times however many years, and that's a big chunk of savings. 37% rate of return. I think they did okay. So I've been doing a lot of talking, and it's your turn to at least participate, and hopefully you've been writing down on your handout, but what we want you to do here is use your annotation tools that Beth mentioned on the left hand of your screen, and just circle or arrow or highlight which one of these fixtures kind of stands out for you. A brand new LED fixture, an LED troffer retrofit kit, a brand new LED strip or maybe some LED tubes to be able to use in your store or that particular space that you're thinking of. Excellent. Thank you for coloring on the screen. Kind of fun, huh? So it looks like we have a few different options here where some of you might be able to go with a brand new fixture. Some might be able to try the retrofit kit and even some of those LED tube options that we talked about. All right, let's keep going. You may still have HID in place that you haven't upgraded to T5 or T8 fluorescent in some of your high ceiling stores. And this is what it would look like. This is a metal halide version of an HID fixture. Remember that lamp we looked at before? That's a metal halide lamp. This is a high bay fixture with an aluminum reflector around it. Sometimes you might see it with an acrylic lens around it. This right here is the ballast. You might have some of those in your high ceiling stores. One of the reasons we try to get rid of that particular fixture is because even though it has a lot of initial light output or lumen output coming out of it, it doesn't last long. So over time, it depreciates, and then you have to either replace the lamps, all the lamps, even though they haven't gone out, you're only getting half the light out of them, or you would want to upgrade to something that lasts a lot longer. So that's a great application for a retrofit. Here's an idea of what a store looks like with the high bays. You also might see in your retail stores, some of the sporting goods stores used the same type of fixture like this, but with compact fluorescent in them. So you might see a high bay fixture that had like 6 or 7 different small, twisty compact fluorescents in it, which I'm not a huge fan of, but we have definitely seen them before. So both of those options are viable solutions or where we could find LED available for upgrade. Here's what the fluorescent T5 or T8 looks like if you have already transferred over to this. Guess what? You still have an opportunity for upgrade to save energy and even have a better lumen output and longer life and slow depreciation by going to LED. Now, for example, I used to work a lot with Fred Meyer in retail for about 10 years, and it's been many years ago now, but it was very difficult for them to go from this fixture to this fixture. So they started with this kind of a high bay and they went over here, and the reason for that, the whole purpose of it was saving energy. But it's difficult sometimes when you're trying to light your store in a way that has a certain look to it. So for example, this was a part of their decor. So the store planners had a hard time with this boxy looking fixture. So just so you know, when it comes to LED, we actually have all kinds of options. There are many shapes and sizes because LED is so small, you can put it in a little circle, you can put it in a rectangle, you can put it even something that looks very strange like this. I shouldn't say that in case the people that made that are on this webinar, but it does look a lot different, doesn't it? And there are 4 of these little modules that have LED strips. Very, very, very cool. Lots of opportunity. Or you can find an LED high bay that looks exactly like the fluorescent, is what you're seeing right here. Up in the ceiling, most people would think it was fluorescent, but those are actually long runs of LED strips underneath it. All kinds of different distribution patterns that we mentioned earlier, which means where is the light going? LED is very directional, so you can highlight certain areas really well by just putting a bunch of different LEDs all over your light fixture. When they're producing them, that's kind of what they look at. And don't forget the long life of at least 50,000 hours on most of these LEDs we've talked about. In this case, when you're replacing your HID or your fluorescent, depending on which one you're replacing, you've got a 30 to 70% energy savings. The cost will be higher than a fluorescent, so let's just say your fluorescent fixture is around $100. You may be looking at twice that cost. for some of the LED high bays, just because of how decorative they are. And, you know, they do require some heat sink, so as you can see, there's a lot coming out of the back of them. But the prices come down quite a bit. So when you look at a fixture that maybe looks just like this, you might be getting down under the 200 range. You just have to talk to your lighting professionals and see where they're at. But the benefits often outweigh the initial cost. You shouldn't have to touch this fixture for a very long time, so lower maintenance, especially in a high bay, that's great because you'd have to get a lift to do anything to it. And don't forget that depreciation factor. The HID version of this that was, you know, after a year or so, half the light was coming out of that HID lamp. That's not the case for LED. You're still going to get close to your 90 to 95% full light output for many years. So you don't have to worry about that very, very quick depreciation. So here's a case study for a high bay where they had 585 existing 400-watt metal halide high bays. That's this metal halide is what the lamp looks like. Here's what the fixtures looked like in the store. As you can see it still looked a little bit darker, at least in this picture it did. The light levels were not necessarily the problem, other than the fact that they had depreciated because they were HID, but they wanted to improve the quality of the light and save energy and money. Those were their reasons for doing this upgrade. They installed 240-watt LED high bays. So they went from 400 down to 240 watt. This is what the high bay looked like. And they wanted to stay with kind of the same look, so they didn't go with a linear look. They actually included dimming controls, so they used those skylights up there in the ceiling that you see, and they dimmed down during the day down to a certain level, whatever it was, whatever level they wanted. They used the skylight and the LED to dim down to whatever foot candles they wanted. So let's just say they wanted 70-foot candles. Sometimes that skylight, that daylight, could come in and give them what they needed, and the fixture would dim down. And they had it zoned accordingly. So that's kind of a high-end system, but with LED you can do so many things, and it's not as expensive as you might think it is because of how much it saves. So here's the finished result. As you can see, it looks a little bit brighter in the ceiling, so that's kind of nice, and they are using those daylights. The nice thing about it is customers walk through the store, they won't know the difference. They will just have a 70-foot candle store average, but it could be daylight or it could be the LED because of the way that it dims down. You don't want it going off and on, you just want it slowly dimming as the light levels come into the store, so pretty cool. So the question I guess we should ask, as far as light levels are concerned, they were originally were an average of 37 because the lamps had depreciated so much. So they went to 80 average foot candles down the aisles, and even higher in some areas when they went to this 240-watt LED. So let's check and see how they did on our little IES guideline that we talked about. So this one would be considered a department store. And the average maintained foot candles are listed at 40. The range is from 20 to 80. So I think they did okay. It might seem higher, you know, to you. I mean, maybe they could have gone down a little bit, but because they're able to dim down, they have all kinds of variety that they can do to save energy. But I think this was a really good solution. They did a good job. They might have been able to go down to a 200-watt LED, I guess, because they still were at the high end. But it's a department store, so each area has a different need. So pretty good stuff on that. Here's what the numbers looked like. This was a big store and expensive, and they had that dimming system. So $303,000, let's say. Nice energy trust incentive. Their annual cost savings, that is a big chunk of money that I don't think you want to walk away from when it comes to saving energy or saving money. I think that 28% rate of return is a no-brainer. Speaking of that, you might be thinking that LED is just too much up front. That 300 and some thousand, even with the energy trust incentive, may be way over your head. But did you know, a lot of people don't know, that the highest cost of the lighting system is actually energy. So if you look at this pie chart here, you can see that initial cost, yeah, 30%, that's a chunk. Maintaining the system, 10%. But the cost of energy over the life of that system is what you're going to pay for. So if there's any way you can decrease that, that's where you get your real, true cost effectiveness. So before we finish up here, let's talk about highlighting your product. You might have some incandescent or some compact fluorescent highlighting your product right now. Incandescent is probably the most used solution. This compact fluorescent saves energy. You'd go from 65 down to 13 watts by using this, but it doesn't highlight your product very well. So a lot of you probably are using incandescent still if you haven't transferred to LED. Here's a furniture store where the entire store is being lit with just your basic track head, no other ambient lighting. So that could be 1,000 lamps. That's a lot of wattage there. Some ideas for LED track lighting. You can just use a basic screw-in LED lamp, which some of you have probably already tried. So basically, the cost would be anywhere from $13 to $50, depending on what you purchase. As you can see, there's a little bit of heat sink coming out the back there, but it just screws into your existing track head, so it could be a very good solution for you if your track heads are in good condition. You could also go with just a brand new LED fixture, which looks like this. The LED is an integral part of the fixture, as you can see in there, so there's no lamp to replace. Basically, you just don't have to touch that track head. You just want to make sure that it's compatible with your track, that you buy the same manufacturer of track head that is the track you have existing. You'll have to pay a little bit more with this, but again, you won't have to touch it for a long time. You might be looking for a different look for your track head or your store, so that could be a good option for you. Both options are good, depending on what your existing condition is, and the wattages will range from 10 to 25 for replacing like a 65 watt to 90 watt. A lot of distribution patterns available, and you want to make sure you get the appropriate one. If you look at this chart here, you can see here's a 25-degree beam angle, here's a 40-degree beam angle. Just be sure that you look at the lamp before you purchase it and find out what the beam spread is or the beam pattern is. This is very, very important to how it's going to look on your product. So if it's a flood or a spot, you'll know how and at what distance you're mounting it from. Those are the things that are important. You also want to look at your color temperature. So right down here you see 3000 K. That's how they talk about color temperature on your track heads and all fixtures in general, but we'll just talk about this for now. If it says 5000 K on the lamp that you're purchasing, it's going to look more like this, the bluer light. But in a retail environment, most of the time you're going to want something a little bit warmer so it doesn't feel too cool, depending on what you're doing. I have seen jewelry stores where they've gone all with this daylight 5K lighting, and it just makes the environment a little bluer, but it still makes the diamonds sparkle, so that might be okay. Just remember to look at that as you're looking for your new track heads or lamps. Here's a sample of a company that had about 1,100 of a 20-watt par 20 track head. They installed less, so they went from 1161 to 839, 13-watt brand new track head. They just mounted it right on their existing track. Here's an idea of what it looked like. As you can see, they had ambient lighting, some of the 2x2 fixtures in the store that were fluorescent already. Excuse me. Let's see how we did on the foot candle chart. So your IES guidelines are telling you that in a department store like that, your range, just depending on which department it is, from 20 to 80. This particular store, when they replaced their incandescent with LED, they ended up with about 58 foot candles average right under that spotlight that you looked at. But an important thing to note here is over on the side in the comments, it says 3 to 10 times greater than ambient light levels. So make sure that your spotlights, your accent lighting right here, anything on displays is more and greater than what your ambient lighting is. So even though your store might be around the correct foot candles, you want to go 3 times up. So this particular solution worked out really well. Here's what the numbers looked like. It was a lot of lamps there, 800 and some, so that's 65,000. And they got a nice incentive from Energy Trust. That's an annual cost savings of $18,000, 55% rate of return. Again, a no-brainer on this one. Great savings, excellent light output. Upgrading your store would be a great solution. Another area, popular area for upgrade is in your parking lot. And we are going to actually have an exterior parking lot lighting and garage lighting seminar coming up on September 20th that Beth will tell you about a little bit later. But for now, I just want to kind of give you a peek at something that might help your parking lot in your retail and store environment, especially if there are some property managers here on this webinar. This is a huge area for LED because mostly you're going to have HID existing. So here's kind of what this particular outfit did. They installed a 141-watt LED. They originally had a 400-watt metal halide on their pole, and they installed 141 watt. That's quite a bit of wattage decrease. They also installed a pole mount motion sensor. So when people walk by, it actually dimmed down. So at full light output, 100%, they would be at a certain light level, and then it would dim down if there's no activity. And then when somebody comes up toward the pole, it would go to full brightness. So see how much energy you can save with that? That's pretty impressive. They saved almost 70% in energy on this whole project. They also had a few other items on there. They had a 250-watt fixtures on a wall and 70-watt downlights that they decreased the wattage and used LED as well. So this was a $33,000 project, cost almost $34,000. Nice incentive from Energy Trust, and their annual cost savings for that parking lot with 140, installing those 140-watt LEDs on the pole tops was about $8,200. So another great rate of return. So I'm going to give you a little example so you can see what it looks like when you can dim down. I'm going to pass it over to Beth, and she's going to show you a little video of how that looks. Okay, so you're looking at the parking lot across the street. So that's your HID right there. That is a metal halide version. Almost looks like high pressure sodium because it's so yellowed, but I'm pretty sure it's a metal halide version. And now we're going to walk to the other side where they redid the LED. Before you do that, look at that vehicle there. You can't really even tell what color it is with that type of lighting. Makes it a little bit harder. Okay, here's the LED parking lot. Now keep your eye on that light fixture right there. Just look at the light fixture. Don't look at that crazy person walking. Keep your eye on the light fixture. Rated the light. There you go. Did you see that? Right when I'm underneath the light fixture, it came to full brightness. That's how the motion sensors are working. So it's dimmed down to 30% when there's no activity, and it goes back up to 100% when somebody hits the parking lot, which is all good. This is a good thing. That's what we want because you're saving energy, but you're also helping with security. So if somebody comes in that space and they need to see well, that's what they can do. Okay, I think we are next getting ready for looking at our Energy Trust incentive offers. As we finish off here, I'm going to pass the mic over to Simone from Energy Trust of Oregon, and she's going to tell you about some of the incentive offers that we have available for a few of the things that we've talked about today.
Hello there. My name is Simone Auger. I'm with Energy Trust of Oregon, lighting program, commercial and industrial, and new buildings. And I just wanted to talk with you today about the Energy Trust lighting programs that are, incentives that are available that Don's been talking about. Energy Trust has lighting incentives for LED applications, and the one thing I do want you to take away from this is pre-authorization is required for projects. So just contact PGE first, and you'll be able to learn more about those requirements. The fixtures we have shown here are some of the examples that Don's talked about. And the first one I'd like to show you is the LED recessed troffers. This is an incentive for individual fixtures, $65 to $75. This is for a new LED fixture or that retrofit kit that Don talked about where you use the existing housing. And so these are per fixture. Just an example incentive. A second incentive available is the LED high bays. For instance, if you're going from 400 watt metal halide to a 150 watt or less LED high bay, the incentive is $275. On the lower wattage, if you go from 200 to 110 watt, that would be a $75 incentive. Moving down to the LED recessed downlights, this is another good option in the retail applications. There's an offer for $20 incentive per fixture or per lamp on these on the downlights. And moving over to the LED tubes, we have a $4 to $8 lamp for lamp incentive available. And so taking out a T8, for instance, and putting in an LED tube would be $4 and $8 if you add controls such as occupancy sensors. And the other incentive that Don talked about in terms of, or the other application we talked about were PAR lamps. That incentive is $10 to $15. Again, we include incentive amounts that are a bit higher when you add controls to the measure. So that gives you even more option for controlling your energy efficiency and something to consider. So that pretty much sums up some of the offerings. There are other incentives available, and we'll be glad to help you with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simone. Really appreciate that. So our next steps today would be take a look at, on your handout, that little space that you have written down in the second page on the bottom there, and figure out what you want to do next. Maybe it would be go audit the space and figure out what you've got in there. You also could contact your lighting distributor or contractor or partner, and definitely get a quote on a few different things. Find out how much money we're talking. And then review those incentive options, usually with your lighting distributor if you're going that direction, or you can contact PGE for some help. And then get approval and move forward. Once you get that one project done, you will feel like you can conquer 10 to 15 of them. So there are a lot of LED options available today, as you could see. I didn't cover every aspect, but at least it gave you something to start with in most of your retail spaces. And you can actually light your space and improve sales and improve your customer satisfaction by upgrading your space. You could even have signs about, how you've saved energy, and people would really love that. But most of all, we want people to feel right in the space that they're in, and think about yourself and how you feel. You're going to have a lot of energy savings no matter what you do with LED. And then don't forget about maintenance savings, because if you don't have to touch that fixture for another 5 years, or maybe 10, who knows how long LED is going to last, it's a lot of savings for you there. And don't worry, because your maintenance people will have plenty to do. And then just go for it now as you get off the webinar today. Plan your next steps for lighting upgrade so you can move forward. We really appreciate it. And I'm going to pass you back over to Beth.
Thank you, Dawn. And I want to let you all know that PGE and Energy Trust do provide free energy efficiency consultations to assist you in identifying the savings opportunities at your store. And if you're interested in learning more, you can contact Paula Conway at the phone number and email listed on the screen, and you'll be receiving that information along with the slides and the recording a couple days from now. I'd like to proceed to the question and answer portion of the webinar, and you can still submit questions to me through chat if you would like. The first question we have, Dawn, is, I have an incandescent can light in my store. Are there LED options for can lighting?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. We didn't cover that part today, but some of your stores might have a round-looking recessed downlight is what we call it, or can light. And as you saw on the screen that Simone shared, there are incentives available for that, and you could either screw in an LED par lamp in it, or you could get a retrofit kit for it, replacement. Both of them very good, viable solutions. The retrofit kit makes it almost look like a brand new fixture, so you might want to look at that option first, and very inexpensive and still incentives available. So good question.
Thanks, Dawn. And our next question is, the lens on my recessed troffer fixtures, they seem kind of yellow. Can I just replace the lens when I update the fixture to LED?
Well, that's a great question. Lenses are very hard to come by. I will tell you, in my years in the industry, it is very difficult to find a lens, an acrylic lens, that matches your fixture. So the answer is yes, you certainly can try. It's difficult. So it's probably best in your solution, if they're very yellowed and cracked, to just get a new kit or a brand new fixture. So good question.
Yeah, I think we have time for one more question, and then we'll wrap up the webinar. The last question is, should I use occupancy sensors in my store?
Another good question. So occupancy sensors basically are going to, they're used with motion or whatever, and they're not great for retail environments because you don't want to annoy people while they're walking through areas and lights are coming off and on and things like that. With a few exceptions, like if you walk through a Target or a Fred Meyer store and they have their freezer cases or their cooler cases with LEDs in them, and they come on when you walk by, that's actually a little bit fun, you know. But for the most part, your ambient lighting in your store, unless you're using daylighting and dimming it down so nobody can tell, occupancy sensor is just not usually valid.
Thank you, Dawn. That was our last question, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us today.